Good evening, everyone. Hope you are well, wherever you are. Hope you've had a good day today. Man, another gorgeous day here in the Warren County area. Hope you were able to enjoy at least a little chunk of it in one way or the other. Just really beautiful. Corbin went for a good long run today, and Tobiah played some tennis. We just I don't know about you. I just like to sit outside. Just being able to sit outside and feel the breeze and be in the sun. Um, like I don't have to be doing a whole lot. Just being outside is it for me. Like I love that, and so just being able to do that right now is fabulous. All right, we're going to jump in again. We have a big chunk to read tonight. Again, you know this passage. You've heard this story before. And so, as we always do, I just encourage you to listen closely to the details that maybe you missed before, to the details that you've just kind of glossed over because of the bigger picture. Um, Listen closely as we go through this. This is Daniel chapter 6. Here we go. Daniel chapter 6. It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel had distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his I don't know, I can't read tonight. By his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." So these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, "May King Darius live forever. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all decreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now, when Darius learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asked God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days anyone who prayed to any god or human being, except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" The king answered, "The decree stands in accordance with the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the ring of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God has sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted out of the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, "May you prosper greatly. I issued a decree that in every part of my kingdom people will fear and revere the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius to the reign of Cyrus the Persian. All right, you know this one. Couple things just want to point out to you. Today, in 2020, how many politicians do you think, this isn't political, you know me, I'm not going to go that route with you, but how many politicians do you think that if we dug deep into who they were and what they're about, would we find no fault? Absolutely. Not one check miswritten, not one dinner expense paid the wrong way, nothing at all. Nothing. And yet that is Daniel. These guys are trying to trick him. They're not trying to trick him, they're trying to trap him. They're trying to find fault with him. He's going to be put as the second in command of the entire kingdom, and they don't like that. And so they're trying to find something against him. And every which way they looked, they couldn't find anything, because he was honest and upright in everything that he did. How about that? And so the only thing they could have against him was God himself. And so they have the king make this decree that no one can worship or bow down to anyone but the king for 30 days. And Daniel did you notice this part? As he's always done. It's not like he did this in spite of the king. This is his routine. 3 times a day, he goes to his room that faces Jerusalem, and he gets down on his knees, and he prays 3 times a day to God. Not because the king said he couldn't, but nothing is going to dissuade me from doing what I need to be doing to worship who God is. And so they go to the king and they say, didn't you decree that this was the case? And nothing can change that. Do you know why nothing could change that? So in their belief system, the kings spoke for the gods. And so if the king would decree it, if he would seal it, if he would write it and seal it, and it's a decree from the king, it's as if it's a decree from God. And so that can't just be changed on the whim of a person, even the king himself. So this isn't an unusual situation. This is commonplace, that the king has decreed it and it can't be changed. And they say, isn't that the way of the Medes and the Persians? It can't be repealed. And so it is. What's the king's response? The king's response is grief, because he likes Daniel. Why does he like Daniel? The same reason that the other guys don't like Daniel. Because he's upright and he's honest and he's going to do his job well and he's smart, and that's a problem. And all of those things don't come just because of Daniel's character, but because God is working through Daniel. It's God's activity in Daniel's life. And the king is anguished. And it's also customary here, if you notice, they waited till the king tried every which way to think of a way out. And at nightfall, they come back to him and say, hey, it's time now. So the way it works is the decree, once there was what am I trying to say? a death warrant, there's going to be an execution, it would happen at nightfall. It would happen like that's when it would be served. And so here it comes, night falls, and they come back to him and say, hey, isn't it time that you are about what you're supposed to be about? And so the king does what he doesn't want to do. He throws Daniel in the lion's den and he seals it up so that nobody can come and mess with it. Doesn't that sound a lot like something else we know in the New Testament where they seal Jesus' tomb and it's sealed with the ring so that nobody comes and can disturb it? Very similar, little parallels there. And the king is so upset he can't eat or drink. There's no entertainment. He doesn't sleep that night. He is stressed out. But Daniel has a great night's sleep. Knowing God's path for your life, knowing God's purpose in your life and God's presence in your life allows you to deal with things on a different level, doesn't it? Hey, I don't know how people who don't have faith, who don't know in a living God, deal with stress and struggle. And we see it around us even today, right? We see them, we see people stressed and struggling, and they're just trying to find something to hold on to, something that's normal. Can you rest in who God is? Daniel sure could. In the lion's den, in the face of disaster. And the next morning, the king comes out and he says, are you still alive? Of course I am. My God protected me. And he's lifted out and not a hair on his head was harmed. He was perfectly fine. I've always wondered what it would be like to snuggle up against a lion and have a sleep. I don't think I'm going to find that out, though. And then the king, it doesn't say that he had to here, but he does anyway. He grabs all of those advisors who did wicked, did wrong, and has them, their wives, and their children. That's also customary, that you don't just punish the person, you punish their entire family. You'll remember earlier in Daniel that there was the threat of killing them and their household would be rubble and so forth. And so that's what's carried out here. And so just going back a little bit, when the king finds out that Daniel was praying, the king was upset with himself because he knew he was tricked. He knew that he shouldn't have done that. It wasn't in his character. And so the king may or may not have punished these guys regardless of whether Daniel was harmed or not harmed. But when he comes out, he knows that that is the next step. And so they are fed to the lions along with their families. And then once again, we see God raised up in a position of honor. That this unbelieving king spreads the word through all the lands that the God of Daniel is the one true living God. We see that again and again and again through Daniel, that God's people are tested. They undergo trial. They withstand it. And by going through trial, God's name is revered in all the land. God can't be tested. He will always come out on top. There's so much more that I could say just about this passage. We just don't have time. We're already running up here on 14 minutes. Let me pray for you tonight, and we'll get going. God, I just thank you so much for this story in Daniel. The simple truth that we hear as little kids is deep wisdom for us as adults as well. God, I pray for those who are hearing this. I pray for the reminders of your word, that you see us and you know us and you know every detail of our lives and you have our best interests at heart. God, you cannot be tested. You reign above all other, and we just thank you. We thank you that you are the creator and you continue to be present in creation here with us. God, I just thank you for this day, a day to be outside, a day to serve you. God, I thank you and I praise you. I thank you for the people who are hearing this. I thank you for technology, that we can be together across miles or blocks or whatever it is. I thank you that we can do this. I thank you that your word can continue to go forth. God, be with us tonight as we rest. Give us your rest. Prepare us for what it is you would have for us tomorrow as we proclaim your word. And we just ask it's in your name. Amen. All right, friends, blessings to you tonight. Hope you are all well. Make sure you wash your hands. Have a good night.